for children with disabilities and their families in terms of navigating the education system. So when we were talking to her and she was willing to give us a chance to share with you guys what's going on in the IEP world, you know, and what do you need to know to help navigate it. So Georgianna, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself more in terms of your personal journey, your professional journey. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for that very kind introduction. So I started my journey personally. You know, I've been an attorney for over 20 years, but I've been practicing special education law for about 11 years now. I say 11 years, really 18. My son is almost 18. I started this journey with him, and my first experience trying to secure an IEP for him at the age of 3 was a difficult, daunting one. And that is what inspired me to start helping families. And long story short, my business sort of organically grew, and I shifted legal paths from criminal defense to special education law. And so that is very, very long story short, that is how I got here, and that is how my passion for nonprofit and philanthropic endeavors grew. And I've been on the board of directors of Shane's for about 6 years now, and I've been on the Autism Speaks Southern California board of directors for this is my 10th year anniversary. And so I thought it was really important to have this meeting today, because I'm getting like phone calls from parents that don't know what to do, that are overwhelmed. The first thing I want to tell parents of children with disabilities, I'm assuming all of your children have IEPs, is to breathe, just breathe. There's a sense of guilt that parents are feeling that they're not doing enough, and you're not supposed to do what the standards that educators are expected to do. Those standards are not for you. Right now, the best you can do is guide your child, love your child, nurture your child, do the best you can to support your child, but do not put this incredible, unrealistic standards on yourselves, leading to anxiety. And this also reflects on your children. And so what I wanted to do today was a little bit of a Q&A. I know that sometimes it's easier to just hear the questions from parents, and oftentimes those questions apply to everybody. But a couple of things that I kind of just, there's a few takeaways that I'd like for you all to extract from this meeting today that it's important for you to know in terms of how to proceed. This is a completely uncertain, unprecedented time. We have no roadmap for this. I don't have any magical wand answers for you today. What I can tell you, and what is crucial for you all to know, is that the IEP still applies. I am seeing across various districts that parents are being told that the IEP is sort of suspended for now, and it's not feasible and it's untenable to apply it. Yes, it is unreasonable to expect school districts to apply the IEP business as usual. The delivery of services, the design of every child's IEP is going to look very, very different during these times. That doesn't mean that school districts in your schools shouldn't be making every possible reasonable effort to implement that IEP. It's hard to define what is reasonable because, as we know, IEPs are individualized. Every child is different. Every IEP is unique. Therefore, what applies to my child isn't going to apply to your child. Some children aren't going to have an easy time doing Zoom meetings or doing accessing an education online with their teachers or with a larger classroom. Some children have hearing impairments. Some children have sensory integration issues, focus, attention issues. And so what's crucial is that you communicate with your school administrator. Sometimes it's the assistant principal that's in charge of special education. Sometimes you've got to contact the district's special education director. Every district is different. Every district is doing things differently. There is no uniformity across the board here. There's not one rule that applies to everyone. So it is important primarily that you communicate, that you collaborate. Right now, what's going to get you through this period and trying to maximize your child's supports and services and instruction is communication with your administrators, with your teachers, and making sure that your IEPs are being applied as best as possible. It is completely unreasonable to expect equivalency. That's not going to happen. And your child is going to regress. That's sort of a foregone conclusion. And moving forward, your children will likely need compensatory relief, which means that at some point an IEP will be held, and there'll be a conversation about what services your child isn't getting at this time, which brings me to another pointer. It's really important for you to keep written communication records, memorialize everything. Whatever your IEP services are, make sure that you are documenting what is or isn't being done, because you need to establish that written record in order for later to address what are the areas that haven't been met, and likely what areas your child will regress in, some more than others. So that's just sort of a little intro is, communicate, document everything. And then a third pointer that I have for parents, which is super, super important. At this time, the IDEA, at all times, applies. The special education law, federal law, has not been suspended. But there's a lot of sort of misconceptions out there about this being a flexible time, or a time where IDEA can be relaxed. IDEA is the legislation that oversees special education. All of your children's rights, special education rights, are rooted within the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which was enacted in 1975. This piece of legislation has evolved over the years, and it has literally evolved via blood, sweat, and tears. And so we're hearing rumbles about potentially relaxing the IDEA via congressional legislation. And parents at this time need to be active, through phone calls, through emails. It is crucial that the most important safeguard that your children have not be suspended in any way, shape, or form. So that's important to be an activist at this time. There's lots of disability rights groups and civil rights groups that are lobbying Congress in making sure. But the loudest, I think most fierce voices come from parents saying, this is how I will be impacted, and this legislation protects our children. And I shudder to think what would happen if those safeguards were taken away, even if for an interim period of time. That is not an option. So that's sort of my third pointer to you is do your research, go to the COPA website, and on there you're going to see a lot of information about what you can do in terms of reaching out to your representatives and senators to make sure that there is no risk of compromising the IDEA. The Secretary of Education can, per the current CARES Act, petition Congress or ask Congress to enact legislation to give states waivers to the IDEA. So that can happen. So I can't impart enough how important it is for you as parents to please raise your voices and make sure that this is something that we continue to keep intact, because our children literally survive with this legislation. And so having said all of that, I guess, Marnie, I can open it up. Do you want to open it up to questions? Because I know that parents, oftentimes I can go on and on and on, but I think that what's most helpful sometimes, especially in these types of settings, is to have the parents ask very pressing questions that they don't have the answers to. And I'll do my best to be able to answer. Like I said, there's no roadmap to this, but I'll do my best to be able to fill in some of the gaps.
That would be wonderful. So can I have a quick question for you. Because I know for my kiddo who does have an IEP, we have a meeting coming up, and it's going to be virtual, obviously.
I'm glad you brought this up. Yes.
So it's going to be via Zoom. Do you have any recommendations on how to handle that? Because I know, there's a lot on the table, right? And negotiating, how are we supporting, how are we not supporting? Do you encourage inviting an outside person to that meeting, just to have another pair of ears?
If do you mean by an attorney or a psychiatrist or, someone that you are currently working with that can contribute to the meeting? Certainly. First of all, parents always have the right to invite anyone that has specific knowledge about the child to the IEP meeting. And so, first of all, I would encourage 100% for parents to pursue their IEP meetings via Zoom. I think it's fantastic that we do have this option. Some districts are going out of their way to make sure that IEP meetings are being held via Zoom. I have no problem with it. Confidentiality is the same. When you really break it down, the only difference is I'm not sitting in front of you physically in a room. You know, there's the same potential to gather all of the participants, all of the significant participants. And I would also urge parents that just like IEP team members are mandated to be present at their children's IEP meeting, it's not any different in Zoom. If you're going to have your IEP meeting, especially around this time, it's typically the annual meeting. It's a big meeting where you're going to be reviewing all of the goals. You're going to be reviewing services, placement for the following school year, specifically if your child is transitioning from middle preschool to kinder, from elementary to middle to high school. Those are major transitions, and that is a major problem I'm seeing. And I'm writing districts getting guidance from special education directors, because although some districts aren't conducting meetings because they haven't kind of gotten it together yet, technology-wise, it is crucial that specifically, and I'm veering off a bit because I want to make sure that this information gets out there, that you insist on at the very least, your Zoom meeting for children that are transitioning. There are children right now that are graduating, for example, middle school. I have a number of clients that are going on to high school. That is a very different environment, requiring very different services and needs and supports that must be addressed. And what placement is going to be offered, whether it's regular education, whether it's a special day class, whether it's a blended program, whatever it may be, that can't be a transition that occurs without having an IEP meeting to address all of these things. So it is crucial that you do take advantage of Zoom. Some parents are afraid of it. I would encourage highly that you ask your school to conduct your Zoom meeting and ask that all members be present. It will be exactly the same thing that you would do in a conference room at a school. And if you've got a service provider or a psychiatrist or, behavior interventionist, someone that's been working with your child during this time, remotely, and you think that person can offer positive feedback, absolutely invite them and they can join you at your IEP meeting. But I can't stress enough how important it is, whether it's a transition or not. If your school has the capacity to hold Zoom meetings, and many districts are doing it. I think the LAUSD is still trying to figure it out. It's such a massive district that it's really difficult to logistically put that together. But I will still urge families to contact your school, ask for your annual IEP meeting, invite whomever it is you feel is beneficial to that meeting, but absolutely insist on it.
Thank you. So do we want to open it up to questions? Do we want some of our folks to unmute if you have a question, and we can take advantage of our time?
Yeah, we have questions. We have two boys. They're both, one will go to middle school, one will go to high school. The situation is our middle school and high school, they are in the same set, basically the same. So the classroom to some degree is the same. Right now, our question is, we want the older son go to high school to be in the diploma track. School, his teacher never discuss this with us, but try to sneak in, suggest him to be in the completion.
The certificate of completion. So some of her recent emails, it seemed to be implicit to her that we would do a certificate of completion. We said, no, we want diploma track, and we want that clear in the IEP.
Do that.
Child's current curriculum, the general education diploma track curriculum?
He's in a special day class.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. Placement is irrelevant. The educational curriculum is either the alternate curriculum where the child receives a certificate of completion and the child isn't expected to meet grade level standards, or the general education curriculum. Whether you're in a special day class or whether you're in a regular classroom, that doesn't drive the curriculum. So what is your child's current? Is it a general education curriculum, diploma track?
I didn't even mention this.
It's never been talked about.
Well, that's important. Your IEP will specifically state what your child's curriculum is. Even if it's alternate curriculum at this time and you think your child is possessing the qualities necessary to perhaps change that moving forward to high school, that is tricky and it's complex and it's possible, but it's something that has to be done via assessments, via an IEP meeting. So that's a hard question for me to answer because there's many variables that are dependent on your current IEP and what's going to be happening moving forward. I would say to you, Absolutely. First of all, no one can send you an email. I mean, no one can, they do it, but they shouldn't. You shouldn't receive an email from anyone that says, we're going to go ahead and change your child's curriculum from X to Y. Every meaningful IEP decision has to be made in an IEP meeting with the meaningful participation of the parents. That is not a unilateral change that can occur. So if your child's current educational curriculum is general education curriculum, that is what needs to remain moving forward. Your IEP is what's called stay put. So whatever the services placements is in the IEP now, that is what applies moving forward. It's a tricky thing when you're transitioning from something like middle to high school, because it is such a major transition. It requires—
It's the same school. And in all school district, we are in the La Cañada school district.
Oh.
The high school and the middle school, actually the special day class is the same classroom even.
Well, like I said, I can't really answer that for you because there's so many question marks that I don't have. But I would say to you that you contact, it's La Cañada School District.
Yes.
You can contact Dr. Hori and you can ask him to convene an IEP meeting.
Yeah, we are doing that.
The special education director, and you know, especially at, like, I can't stress enough how important it is for children that are transitioning. It's important for all children to have their IEP meeting, but specifically for children that are transitioning and there are questions about curriculum moving forward, certificate or diploma track. So that is something that can only be addressed via an IEP meeting. And you can certainly disagree with it, and then you've got, you know, your due process mechanism in place to go pursue that if you disagree. But I would urge you to absolutely contact him and tell him that you're requesting that an IEP meeting be held via Zoom because you need your offer of faith for the next year. What I want you to take away from this is that they cannot, I don't care what they recommend to you via email, via conversation, it is not a unilateral decision for every one person to make. This is a meaningful discussion. It's a collaborative discussion between you, administrators, teachers, service providers. If assessments were conducted, what are the assessments saying? What are they recommending? You can certainly disagree with those and ask for an independent assessment. But at the core of this is you've got to convene your IEP meeting and make a record of what you agree and disagree with moving forward. And if you've got a triennial or you've got a transition, combine those into one big meeting. Those don't have to be held separately. Just make sure that whatever issues are outstanding, you let them know you want to address X, Y, and Z, convene your meeting, and all of that can be addressed at that one meeting. Just because we are in this COVID-19 climate doesn't mean that IEP meetings stop. Parents are being told we're not going to hold IEP meetings until the following year. That is a timely violation. IEP meetings must be held by a certain date every year. And regardless of the time that we are in right now, the technology is available for districts to make reasonable efforts to conduct these meetings, and so they should. And so you should insist on it. Otherwise, they are non-compliant and are violating your IEP. So I would urge you again, contact him, insist on your meeting, and address all of these concerns at your meeting. And in the meantime, document what's being done or not being done.
So I wanted to, just for the sake of time, we had one question in via chat from Darren. We have had to reduce our ability to work due to the need to provide full support to our child during the school day. He was in a 12 to 1 to 4 class, so it's not feasible to let him self-direct on distance learning. Is there any hope for getting some reimbursement or refund of the school fees paid to my son's school, as they're not providing anywhere near the support necessary?
Absolutely. This is what I was talking about early, compensatory relief. You know, during this time, the same remedial rights that always apply to parents. And so when the IEP isn't being complied with, whether COVID-19 or regular times, parents always have an avenue of appeal, and they can file a due process complaint and request whether it's out-of-pocket reimbursement or, you know, whether it's resource support or OT or speech and language, whatever services the IEP requires for the student to access the curriculum that are not being provided. Parents can certainly pursue compensatory education, whether that means educational, whether it means monetary reimbursement, because they're being right now forced to allocate funds toward funding their children. I'm not talking about going after parents' salary that they're losing because they're not able to work to support their children. That's a separate issue. That is not an IDA claim. IDA claims are only based on compensatory relief based on educational costs, whether it's instruction time that's missing, or whether parents have to go ahead and fund out of pocket because the district isn't providing whatever service. Absolutely. The long story short is, yes, you do have a recourse and you can pursue. Absolutely. What is important for you to do now is make sure you're documenting all of those things. Make sure you're documenting conversations, what they're telling you, what they're not telling you, the services that they should be providing. All of that should be documented, because you're in essence gathering, for lack of a better word, evidence to present your case later on appeal to try and, at the very least, get your out-of-pocket cost plus whatever compensatory relief can be pursued due to a failure to provide that which should have been reasonable at this time. It's going to be tricky because, again, we don't have a roadmap as to, how this is supposed to be navigated, but the law still applies. IEPs have to be complied with. And certainly if they're making no effort to help you, there's no question there's a violation in place.
Great, thank you. I wasn't clear on whether compensatory relief was just for services that were missed, or school days that were missed, or there could be actual monetary. So,
no, absolutely. Let's say, for example, if right now your district is not providing you whatever service it may be, whether it's the specialized academic instruction, whether resource teacher, whether it's your related services, and therefore you have had to go and hire someone who's going to be remotely working with your child, you can certainly pursue that cost at a later time via a due process complaint.
Great. Okay, thank you.
I've got another question from John. If my son is not getting speech therapy from school, should regional centers be giving him his services?
That's tricky too, because it is the district's responsibility to provide those. It's an educational service, and so it is absolutely your district's responsibility at this time to provide you that service, and not the regional center. Typically, the regional center doesn't provide those services beyond the age of 3 unless you qualify for under certain categories. That's a whole other discussion. But what I would say to you is you pursue your school administrators and you insist that the service is being, that the service be provided. I know for a fact that it is being provided. My own child, I know how difficult it is. Trust me. This is why I love to do these meetings, because I'm walking the same road you're walking, and it is a struggle and it is super hard. My child is very challenged right now and having a really hard time, but his school has gone above and beyond. And so his speech and language therapy is being provided via Zoom. His counseling services, which are really necessary at this time and are really helping him, are being provided. He spent 30 minutes on Zoom yesterday with the district counselor. And so you should insist that those services be provided, because there are reasonable means for them to be provided. And so regional center, it's going to be a tough thing to pursue. And like I said, that's a whole other discussion, but it is your district's responsibility to provide your speech and language, and you should pursue it. And if they're not providing it, again, document what they haven't done, because we can certainly pursue compensatory relief later. When I say that too, I always have to preface, it's so hard for a parent to hear that, because your child's time is crucial. And so this isn't time that's going, no matter what we can file later for compensatory relief or compensatory education, it's important that you do everything you can now, because your child needs help now. And so whatever your district can do to support your child and provide those services now, you should pursue that, because your child's disability isn't going to be paused given, COVID-19, and we can just pursue things later. We certainly will pursue, and I can imagine down the pike what sort of litigational nightmare might be coming. But in the meantime, to try and avoid that as much as possible, districts should be making an effort to provide the services as best they can. And parents should insist on it.
I have a hand raised from Lulu Vasquez.
Hi, Lulu.
Hi, good afternoon. So I'm pretty new to all of this, and I have a daughter who is currently in the Glendale School District. She's in preschool, and she will be, she's supposed to be having a triennial IEP. Honestly, I don't remember if it was scheduled for this week or the coming week. When they were supposed to hand over the papers to me, and it was literally just right before the lockdown. And so here I am kind of in limbo of whether this IEP was still going to, move forward, whether we were going to move forward with it or not. Obviously, in the first couple of weeks, I didn't even think about reaching out to them until probably 10 days into our lockdown. And I sent out an email just to everybody at the district. And of course, at that point, they didn't have any answers. They thought about potentially moving forward via a Zoom, but they really didn't know what it looked like then. So here we are now today, where I haven't received basically any information from anyone. Should I pursue? I mean, that's kind of what I'm understanding or gathering from the information that you have been, giving us right now, is that I should really insist on moving forward with this IEP.
You should.
I know it's only we're going from preschool into transitional kinder, but I just didn't know how important.
That's a big transition. That's a really big transition that shouldn't be downplayed. And this has happened a lot where assessments were being conducted and then this happened. So a lot of kids are sort of in limbo. Some schools or districts are attempting to continue assessments via Zoom. It's very challenging to do, obviously. A lot of the assessments entail observation in the classroom to get a really clear picture of the students' sort of behavior and positives and negatives. So I would first ask them whether they're willing to continue assessments to the extent that they can through Zoom or through technology. But so you already have an IEP, yes? This isn't an eligibility IEP. You're just having a triennial.
We're having a triennial, correct?
You got your IEP in preschool, and now you're transitioning to TK.
Correct. And they mentioned that this was like a big deal, kind of like our first IEP, where there's going to be psychologists and there's going to be a whole team.
Yeah, there should be. There. First of all, there should always be a whole team.
Right.
Every IEP meeting, I always stress that. They tend to sort of not have everybody present that needs to be there, but at every IEP meeting, all team members that are working with your child, that are providing instruction and services, should be there. And especially the transition from pre-K to TK, it's a big change. And there's going to be, depending, is your child going to go into a regular classroom, into a special day class? Does your child require, therapeutic intervention? Does your child, 1-to-1 aid? Whatever it may be, there's a lot of variables up in the air right now, and I'm assuming a lot of assessments that are incomplete. I would reach out and ask what the feasibility is of trying to complete as many assessments as possible, and keeping in mind that it is a challenge. And I would absolutely, at the very least, ask that they continue and convene the meeting. They may say to you, we don't have enough information, we haven't completed the assessments. Well, it is an exceptional time. And so things can proceed as usual. So at the very least, I always say that now, at the very least, what is the very least that districts can do? They can convene IEP meetings if they have the technology available, and truthfully speaking, pretty much anyone can do this. And anyone can do this. So if districts have the technology and the ability, you should insist. My understanding is that Glendale is conducting IEP meetings. And so you should reach out and ask that they convene that transition meeting, and to the best of their ability, provide that support for transition. And then when the new year begins, you can convene a meeting at that time to go over whatever areas may have still a gap in them. But no doubt you should insist on your IEP meeting for transition.
Okay, part two of my question is, we've been out for about 4 or 5 weeks now?
Week 5. Who's counting?
Okay, yeah. Right. So she just received her first virtual speech therapy with them just yesterday with the district. OT hasn't, really taken place. They've done a good job about, on a weekly basis, just sending me information as to what type of activities I can work with her while I'm at home. But I'm not sure if there's going to be any virtual therapies that are going to happen. But is this something that I should pursue? I'm not sure if I'm just kind of laying back and really not doing much, or there's.
Here's what I've been telling parents. A lot of families are sort of waiting to get contacted, and some districts, like I said, are doing a phenomenal job. Others, week 4, have not gotten it together and have not reached out to families. you need to be proactive during this time. You always need to be proactive now more than ever. You should reach out to them. The IEP, like I said, I can't stress it enough. The IEP is not suspended. There isn't some interim program where the IEP services don't have to be implemented or pursued. My understanding again is those services are being provided. They can be provided. And so to the extent that the technology is available to the service provider, and being that you've had your speech and language, which tells me absolutely they are engaging in that practice. And so you should insist on your OT as well. There is really no reason why the OT provider, especially if your child has individualized OT, that provider shouldn't reach out to you and set up your Zoom time with your child on that weekly basis. And, you know, you are owed, technically this is week 5, and if it took districts and some schools a little longer than others to kind of figure out how to move forward and how to traverse this. So a lot of the services haven't been provided. So at the very least, kids are going to be owed compensatory relief for the past 4 weeks. And then moving forward, you know, we're looking at probably through the summer. That's up in the air, but this is educational instruction time that children are missing that will have to be made up at some point. But like I said, whatever can be done now should be. And you're telling me that they've been able to provide services online. I would insist, I would reach out to the OT. If the OT isn't getting back to you, reach out to the administrator and let them know that they're in violation of your IEP because you're not getting your virtual services as you should be. So you should reach out. Don't wait for them to call you. Everyone is overwhelmed right now. I'm not pointing fingers at anyone. People are doing the best they can, and some have resources more than others do, but as a parent, it is primarily your responsibility to reach out, because if you don't, chances are you're not going to hear from a lot of people, depending on what district you're in. Like I said, every district is different. Everyone's doing things differently. So you have got to take, you've got to have that ownership, and you need to move forward and pursue whatever you can for your child. You've got to be proactive.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I have a great comment from Karen Gilman about the regional centers, and she was sharing that regional centers can increase respite care hours right now, and also parents can ask for a different service called personal care. So I appreciated
Thank
that.
you. Absolutely.
And then Christina has had her hand up patiently.
So
Unmute yourself, Christina.
It's a wealth of information. So thank you, Georgiana and Marnie, for putting this together. It's everything I'm hearing is just so valuable. I don't mind waiting at all. So couple things. One, because you just talked about regional center, I'm a board member of the North Los Angeles Regional Center. And I just want to piggyback on that because it's a very valuable resource that came from the Department of Disability Services. They put out an amendment saying that regional center consumers and families can request through their regional center service coordinator additional personal care service hours, or if they have them already, additional personal care service hours. Now, one thing I want to clarify what personal care service hours are. It does not mean that parents can get reimbursed or paid to be home with their kids during this time, which is kind of a bummer. I'm a parent of a child who's a regional center consumer. But IHSS, if you receive IHSS, or even if you don't, that's in-home supportive services, they are also providing a possible increase that would go directly to parents to help them in this time of need. Personal care hours or service hours could be given to somebody in your home that is not the parent or guardian, maybe a sibling who's over 18, or another family member, or if you have a caregiver that even doesn't live in the home but that can come to the home, they will provide that service for them as well. So that may be an additional, that definitely is an additional help.
Definitely.
Parents, consumers, if they can call their regional center service coordinator, if they don't get a hold of them, they can call the main number to their regional center and let them know that they want to be part of this, they've been trying to get a hold of their service coordinator. It's very important if your service coordinator does not get back to you that you let regional centers know this. So yeah, that's regional center stuff. So the other thing for you, Georgianna, I have a question. I'm the parent center director at Leachman CTC, which is a career and transitional center. We service students 18 to 22 years old. It's mainly all vocational based training. So we have, you know, a store and film program and everything within the school, which we're not able to access, obviously. And there are 54 students, including my son, who was scheduled to graduate this May. And unfortunately, you know, that won't be occurring. I know you were speaking about compensatory education. Is it possible for us to kind of collectively request that we come back in the fall to make up for the lost time that we've had during this crisis? And also ESY, I understand, may not be happening as well. That was one question I had for you.
Technically, yes. Is your child turning 22?
Yeah, he already did. So he was going to be finishing up in May or June and graduating.
That's the tricky part, because as you know, once they turn 22, they age out and they graduate. But technically, yes, compensatory relief should still apply for this time that it's not been provided. So the short answer is yes, with a few caveats. And we would have to look into that more closely. But the short of it is yes, your child absolutely is still entitled. Whether he graduated or not, the time lost is still owed. So that can be a possibility for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'll reach out to you on that separately. And then the other thing I just learned this morning, we had a meeting at the school, is that the teachers are not required to do Zoom through UCLA, which is very interesting. And it's really a bummer. I mean, some of the teachers are doing
the word interesting. I use the word highly inappropriate.
Yes, especially for our community. You're right. And a couple teachers have done it, and I've seen the students and the engagement. My son is nonverbal. He can't get on and access. He can't do the homework, the schoolwork they're sending. Is there anything that we could do, again, collectively? Because I think that personal interaction, even though it's online, for our community to see their peers and to see their friends is hugely, hugely valuable.
Absolutely. I read the contract this week when it came down between, we're talking specifically about the LAUSD, UTLA and LAUSD, and unfortunately it's going to hurt our children. And what I'm telling parents is, just because there's this existing contractual obligation between these two entities, it doesn't mean that those terms don't violate our children's rights. And I personally believe that they do. This contract limits teachers to 4 hours per week maximum, 4 hours per day teaching maximum. And it also gives them the option to provide instruction online via video teleconferencing or Zoom or not. And so some teachers are above and beyond, leaps and bounds, helping. Others are not. And because they have the flexibility, unfortunately, some kids will benefit more than others. My child requires that, face-to-face. And a lot of our children, their social interaction is comprised of their school time, with their teachers, with other students. That's key. I can tell you, my child, 90% of his social interaction, which he craves, is at school. So he's missing all of that right now. And I think it's unfortunate that it's a whole sort of more bigger, complicated discussion, but what that is doing, unfortunately, is also limiting the amount of time that service providers or teachers can spend, implementing what the IEP minutes are, so automatically our kids, that time has been reduced automatically, but it will be owed later. That much I can promise you, that is going to have an impact. It is having a negative impact on how our children are being instructed. And so to your question, that kind of goes back into that sort of packaging everything into an appeal for later, truthfully, because there's nothing you can do right now. That is what is being done at this minute. And while you can petition your teachers personally to, really engage more with your child online, some children are not going to benefit from being provided a package or apps or online independent instruction with their parents. You know, we're not educators. I know my child and I have sat all week long trying to do this, and I'm pulling my hair out because he just doesn't want to do it. And I frankly gave up. Like, I can only do so much. I am done. And so I will pursue this at a later time. I personally won't, because I'm very happy with, you know, my team has been amazing. But unfortunately, it isn't working out that way. And the student isn't always going to respond the same way. You know, that kind of leads me to a quick sort of segue in terms of services at home. Right now, you know, certain health care providers are deemed essentials. The Department of Education has issued an advisory that, you know, a therapeutic companion of a child is deemed an essential worker. And so districts have no business deciding whether or not a therapeutic companion can come to your house or not. Right now, the advisory is they can. And so there's a lot of children out there who have this service that could have an easier time accessing their instruction with their service provider at home with them, but yet it isn't being done. Can we file a due process complaint now to pursue it? Sure, but by the time we go through that process, you know, our child is losing time. So yes, you've got all of these sort of recourses that you can pursue, but that is going to be at a later time. What's important is right now, what can be done now, and there's really nothing legally that can be done to get this implemented that will happen overnight. That all is a process, and so the best way, like I said, is to reach out to your administrators, to your teachers, really engage in that collaboration and kind of plead with them. Look, my child, this isn't working for my kid. I get that you don't have to do video conferencing, but it's not working. Can you help me? You know, whatever the issue may be. And again, every kid is completely different. So reach out and try and collaborate to try and come up with a design that works with your child, because unless that is done now, it's going to be so much ground to have to gain later. And so really do what you can right now to just have a conversation and kind of plead with them to please do a little more if your child isn't responding to whatever the plan is.
Okay, thank you. And then, so I'm also keeping track, like you said, it's very important to write down everything that, you know, works. Like, even if you
write everything down. I cannot stress that enough. Write everything down.
Okay, so like attempting to do a Zoom and then they get up and walk away because their, you know, attention is not, you know, they're not engaged, or their attention. I think those little details will help families later.
In essence, it is a challenge. I keep saying that, but you know, you can relate that to if you were in school, would they engage in those types of actions? No, it's the same standard. If they're on Zoom with your child for 30 minutes and those are a valuable 30 minutes, they need to be there 100% dedicated, fully devoted to your child those 30 minutes, and they need to be meaningful. The access that they're providing your child needs to be meaningful. Otherwise, it's a waste of time.
Yeah, and the support staff isn't there either. I mean, we can support as best we can, but their one-on-ones or the behavior, you know, the support staff isn't there. Is there any sort of?
Could be. I mean, like I said, support staff, there's an argument that they can come to your home.
Yeah.
But there's also an ability to have, you know, that behavior intervention support staff online with the teacher or the service provider kind of guiding along. I mean, it's hard for me to sit back and say, you guys should do this. You know, I'm not trying to dictate how everyone should do things, but what I do know is that the effort should be made, at the very least. Reasonable efforts need to be made.
Okay, and is it worth?
Parents should demand them.
Is it worth parents collectively? Oh, sorry, just last, like putting together.
Okay, we have to wrap up. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I apologize. I know there's so many questions and there's so much.
All day.
We could have Georgianna on here, you know, once a week, and it would be a massive gift.
I'm doing another Zoom with the Autism Foundation of Orange County at 4 p.m. If you go to my Facebook page, my Law Offices of Georgianna Kelman, that information is on there, so you guys can jump online on Zoom or Facebook Live on their page at 4 o'clock today. So, you know, I'm trying to continue the conversation as best I can.
It's amazing what you're doing. Beth or Marcy, could you guys put that into the chat? Georgianna's Facebook page? Is that possible? I know we have so many other questions. So there's one last one, and I just wanted to end on this. So Karen Gilman asked, do you have emails for LAUSD special ed division folks or assistant principals? So when you're reaching out, kind of what's the chain of command? Is it teacher first? Is it principal first? Is it everybody in a group email, just so everybody is seeing the same thing?
In the LAUSD, well, if you have everyone's email, from the key person to reach out to first should be the administrator in charge of your school's special education. In the LAUSD, that typically is the assistant principal. So reach out to your assistant principal, and if you have the emails of your teacher service providers, certainly copy them on that email so everyone is in the loop about what the issue is. But the primary person you should reach out to is your assistant principal. If you're not hearing back, then reach out to whomever the next person is that you're communicating with that can maybe access the assistant principal, especially if you're reaching out because you're not hearing from people or because you're not getting the supports that you think you need, then it should be the assistant principal. You can go to the LAUSD website, their special education website, all of the information that in terms of who to contact from the very top is on there. But hopefully when you reach out to your assistant principal, they will reach out to you. My experience has been, in what I've seen so far, is that they're making every effort, reaching out to parents. And because there's such a voluminous sort of demand right now, some are not getting back to you as quick, but I would send them an email every day. I wouldn't stop. You can't call anyone because no one is anywhere to answer phones. Everything right now is communication via email. So you just got to keep trying.
I cannot thank you enough, Georgianna. Thank you.
I can do this once a week with you. I
know.
I mean, I walk, like I said, I walk everyone's shoes. I get it. I'm in the same boat. It is hard. But my last piece of advice is give yourselves a break. You are not special ed teachers. You cannot be expected to provide the same support at home. It's unreasonable, and you shouldn't put that demand on yourselves.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think everybody's afraid, right? We're all, trying to look at our children's growth and say, okay, where are they going?
Absolutely.
How do I help this?
Just remember to keep a little bit of perspective in that, yes, this has been a challenging, tremendously difficult situation for everyone, but it's been 4 weeks. It hasn't been a year. So keep into perspective, it's a relatively short period of time in terms of what our children have lost. It can be huge for some families versus others. Yes, it's all relative, but we have our mechanisms in place to move forward.
Hello?
Yes?
Hi, I have a question real quick. My name is Melody.
This is got to be our last question, okay?
Okay, I have a daughter who's go to Warren Lane Elementary School, and I was given difficulty times on how to get her eye ready to her level and not at a 5th grade level or where she can't understand it on the computer. How do I get my assistance? I called Inglewood School District. I called the principal. They was like, oh, we're going to fix this. But I get no assistance nowhere. Just back and forth emails from the principal, nothing, and nothing from the special ed department. Where do somebody could send me something to have her do some type of learning that's free? Everything else is online, you got to pay for.
Well, everything should be free. It's a free, appropriate public education. So you shouldn't be paying for anything. Unfortunately.
Yeah, if you go to ABC Miles or anything like that, you got to pay for that stuff. Well, I have no assistance.
The district cannot impose any cost on you. The IEP is 100% free, and whatever services your IEP has stated, those must be provided to your child free of charge. And so I hear your frustration. It is very hard. I know. Unfortunately, like I said, at this time, there's not much of a recourse other than continuing to call and continuing to insist, because there's just nothing else that can be done right now, except what I told you earlier, just document everything they're not doing so we can later pursue compensation for lost time. But you should be talking to your special education division, your special education department. You shouldn't be talking, the school principal, especially Inglewood, isn't the person in charge of IEPs. You should reach out to the Inglewood special education director. Go on their website and get that information. And worst case scenario, if no one responds to you, the only other option is to take a legal course.
I mean, they have not, I have not got a response, and it's been a whole month.
You know what? Do me a favor, call my office, and we will make a quick phone call for you.
All right, guys, we are going to wrap up. Thank you again, Georgianna.
My pleasure.
I am going to just offer you guys to join us. We're doing a couple different virtual things this month. So I'm very excited. We have 30 days of play. So every day we post something. It's a workout Wednesday, it's music Monday. But every day there's just short bite-sized pieces of content to keep us all connected and playing. And then we have our fabulous April 25th from 10 to noon. We have our Play at Home Day. So it's My Play Club. It's where all of our families of all abilities come together virtually via Zoom. So I put a link into our website and Play at Home. So April 25th, come join us because we will be playing and connecting and continuing the conversation. So, all right, you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Georgianna.
Bye. Very welcome.
Be well, my friends.
You too.
Thank
I'll talk to
you.
you soon.
All right, take good care.